The Business Renovator. It's a wonderful wintry day in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I reside. We were being teased about the weather. It looked like we were going to get right into spring, but we're still hanging on to winter. So let's launch right into my buddy's book, Brian Monahan, Customer Delight 365. And let's see what wisdom we pulled out of it today for us. This is a very old quote, but very applicable. Face the simple fact before it comes involved. Solve the small problem before it becomes big. Lao Tzu. So Brian's kick on this is if you put spoiled milk back in the refrigerator, it might get cold, but it's still spoiled. Creating customer delight requires timely attention to challenges in your business processes. A quick response to a challenging situation is often the difference between losing a customer and creating a loyal customer. Reread the last sentence because there's more to it than meets the eyes. Okay, I'm a good student. I'll read it again. A quick response to a challenging situation is often the difference between losing a customer and creating a loyal friend. Loyalty is often won in the trenches. My buddy Brian's a pretty wise guy. He specializes in customer delight, and I'm glad that I've met him. And what we're going to talk about today is going to be really relevant on how I found this book and how I found Brian Monahan. I get to bring in a friend, a colleague that I've known for the last 6 years, and according to Ted, he says it's to the day. So welcome, Ted. Thank you for taking the time out in your busy schedule to be on the Business Renovator with me.
It's my pleasure. And yeah, as mentioned to you earlier, it has been almost 6 years to the day since we met. It was a little warmer and a little sunnier because it was in San Diego. But
yeah, no snow there.
We'll take whatever we can get weather-wise here.
So for my guests that are looking and watching either now or in the replay, because I've known him for 6 years, doesn't mean you know anything about him. But by the end of the live stream today, you'll know a little bit more. So let me tee him up a little bit. So Ted Creighton is a strategic business coach with FocalPoint coaching, as am I. And he is passionate in helping business leaders and business owners achieve their full potential and is very dedicated to enhancing the profitability of small to medium-sized businesses. Ted has worked with some of Canada's leading consumer packaged good companies, including companies like British American Tobacco, Estee Lauder Cosmetics. He had held a variety of leadership roles in strategic planning, manufacturing operations, supply chain management, new product introduction, and Q&A functions. So now you're officially welcome, Ted.
Thanks. Yeah, I might add to that. Over and above that, I've been married for 35 years to obviously the same woman. We've got 5 kids, and I actually reside here in beautiful Toronto, Ontario.
Very cool. And even though you're in Toronto, you're really a Habs fan. I'm
really a Montreal Canadiens fan. I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. So I take an awful lot of ribbing for that, but I am a proud, red, white, and blue.
Well, they have had a wonderful tenure in their history. They've won how many cups?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I want to say 27, but I kind of lost count after 93. So yeah, I think it's that many.
Yeah, they've done really well.
I bring that up periodically with my family, who are for the most part all Leaf fans. So
yeah, I'm not going to say what we call them out here. They're just because being a
you can't say that on TV. No, I agree. You can't bring that up.
Say that on TV. And where I'm at, I'm trying to be a Flames fan, but they're not very. I think the flame is going out.
We all have our crosses to bear, my friend. So, but you got to believe.
So we had promoted this as what was the impact of 2020 on business, and I think it'll be an interesting perspective because I'm in the West and you're in the East, and we have different clients and different people we hang out with. Yeah. So what's some of the things that you've noticed? Because it's almost a year ago that everything turned, and we needed to, I'm not going to use the P word, we needed to shift and adapt and adopt to some new things.
No, you're right. I used the word pivot so many times. I think I got my hand slapped from about September onwards to never use it again. But no, but you're right. I mean, one of the things back last March, it was interesting because there's a lot of stuff going on business-wise last March, and a lot of people had great plans for 2020, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and the brakes were put on, and it sort of it led people to uncharted territory that they really didn't know what to do. And so one of the things, as with business coaches, is one of the things you try and do then is to just dig in and help, because from a coaching and consulting perspective, a lot of times you don't know either. But the issue is you can't stand still and do nothing. And so part of the sort of the double down back, actually it was literally a year ago, was to try and get in front of as many people as possible to sort of help out and figure out, what their challenges are going to be to A, stay afloat, B, find the money that they need to keep going. And then, start figuring out, what their next steps are going to be, not measured in necessarily even months, but sometimes in weeks. How do you go virtual? How do you, how do you talk to your employees? How do you put the right COVID protocols in place? All that sort of stuff. And the intent was really in an effort to give back, not to try and, again, the whole, capital S selling thing wasn't really an issue for a lot of people. It was more capital S survival, and, trying to get in front of enough people to sort of help them so that they could at least prolong the dream they had long enough so that they could then sort of turn around and thrive afterwards was really the important thing.
One of my mentors along my journey, I count time now by decades instead of years because it's a lower number. So about 4 decades ago, I came across a fellow who used to live in Toronto, but he moved out west, and he was in the business of helping people think differently. And something that I've never forgotten that he said, there's many things, but this one thing is pertinent to what we're talking about today. He said, these kind of things jar your preserves. And I use that often with my coaching clients and prospective coaching clients and other people I lead. So I'm going to ask you, what does that mean when you hear these kind of things jar your preserves?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think for a lot of people, it really, when you say something like that, it really sort of proves, your values, and it proves, who you really are as not just a business person, but also as a person. Right. Because a lot of people, and again, the preeminent thing for me and a lot of the people I knew was, let's just dig in and help, with no other sort of ulterior motive than to, try and get people from desperation to sort of hope. And that was a big thing for us, was to try and figure out, people did need access to funding. That was for sure. There was a lot of grant programs that were coming out. How do you get access to those? There was a lot of things that the federal government was putting out. But the problem a lot of times is, there's a lot of sort of jargon. There's a lot of sort of, red tape to sort of get there. So the question was, how do you get people in front of, the financing? How do you get them in front of sort of, the right people to let them know how to handle things like PPE and handle some of the COVID protocols? And so when you're doing that, it really showed who was value driven and people focused, and who were just I hate to call it, but the pretenders too.
So what you've done there is a really great example definition of one of the aspects of what jars your preserves is, and that is that this stuff happened, it's happening. What can I do to make it better? What can I do to serve people? What can I do to serve myself and my family? That's one path. And the other one is, and usually what goes with the other one is, marketing stops and any investment in your people disappears. So they jar their preserves, lock down the hatches, and hope like heck that they survive. And the ones that have done that have not necessarily survived. And I'm not saying that the people who are proactive that did try to do something different, to expand, to sustain, to exist, that it wasn't an easy road. Some of them didn't survive. But there's the ones that take, as you and I coach people on the victor-victim. So being a victor is, okay, I didn't cause this thing to happen, but what can we do to make it better? What can we do to
Right.
to sustain a healthy existence. So that's what when I think of whether it's an economic downturn or pandemic, this first pandemic for me ever, and hopefully the last ever.
Yeah.
But it's how we react to what shows up in our life versus the actual event itself, isn't it?
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, because I found it, and it was interesting, and we can go into this later, but one of the things, since the pandemic started, the partner and I started running a weekly business roundtable. And again, it was really just to get like-minded people together. And we actually had our first anniversary of it yesterday. And one of the things we started talking about was just, how far we've come over the last year. Because to your point, the first few months, we're really trying to convince people that, anything they're going up against is not a hard stop. It's really, it's really a problem that needs to be resolved. So you really have to get in front of it and figure out how to go through, whatever the roadblock is. But the other part of it is to recognize that, that doing nothing is probably not an option, because a lot of people were frozen in their boots, or, in their footsteps, to say, well, maybe I will just wait this out. Because if you remember way back when, last March, I don't know what it was like in Alberta, but here in Ontario, there was this expectation that, this is going to last maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month. So a lot of people were doing we'll wait this out and see what happens. And what you realized was that's really not an option, because if it goes beyond that, which of course we now know that it did, you're not going to be able to survive by the do nothing sort of option as far as your scenario. So it's really figure out what you need to do, start moving in the direction of doing it, and reach out for the help you need.
So I popped this up below our videos there for a reason. I know you do some acting of some sort. I don't know all the details. That would be a conversation for another time. And I've done some performance work as well. But I did it not to be a performer per se, but to become more effective on a platform, on a stage. So I took improv. And one of the things I learned from improv was good improv needs a yes attitude.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say I came up with this beautiful idea here. I did, but I leveraged it and tweaked it from a really creative dude who I met through the pandemic because of shifting how I was connecting and engaging with people, because we weren't allowed at this time last year. We were not supposed to go out and see people. Cold calling is not my favorite thing to do. So how could I creatively and innovatively do it another way? Because I still wanted to sustain my business. I still wanted to help people. I still wanted to feel like I made a difference. So I got online even more, deeper, wider, and I've become a huge fan of some platforms. Facebook is one. And I know some people I talk to about Facebook, it's terrible. The population on Facebook is over 1 billion people, 1.5 billion or something. Some of them are bad, some of them are good. But guess what? That's the world. Some are good, some are bad. So find the ones that are good and you can help. So
pick your lane, right?
Yeah. So I've met some interesting people. Pat Hazel was a former writer for the Seinfeld comedy show. So he came up with, yes, you expect sales, because we were hanging out in the emerging sales winners Facebook group. But I thought, that's too limiting. Yes, I do work in the sales space and coach and train and deliver some wonderful content from Brian Tracy. But I thought that the yes to success, by expecting success versus sales, is more broad, more better, more better. That's one of my favorite words. MOBETTA, more better. But it's key. If you've ever been to improv, when they say yes to yes, let's, and they go do it, it's funny. If somebody says, no, I don't want to do it, the humor is, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And people that have the high achievers in life, doesn't necessarily mean money, but high achievers say yes to more things and follow through than the low achievers. So that's a
good point.
Long rant, but I wanted to share it because it ties into 2020 and what we've been going through.
I think you're right. And I think one thing that, we've talked about, I think, over the years too, is just, like you said, the whole victor-victim thing. But the other part of it too is just the whole, abundance mindset. I mean, at the end of the day, sure, there's a lot of crap going on. I mean, there's no doubt over the last year, there was a lot of crap. And I think in certain businesses, certainly the restaurant business and a lot of service-based businesses, there was a lot of hardship. But the other part of it too is that you have to start looking at, okay, so, but what opportunities are out there? How can I leverage this situation to make my, my business better, faster, stronger over the next, X number of months? How do I, and again, I'm going to use the word pivot, but how do I sort of, adjust my offerings so that I can do something, whether, again, whether it's curbside, whether it's online, whether it's semi-virtual or whatever, and I've been impressed by the number of people that just said, okay, I'm going to make the best out of a bad situation, flip to online, and have done really well.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of people would have just been stopped in their tracks and said, you know what, yeah, this is too much, too much work, or I just don't see a path forward. I'm not going to do anything. And then would have just, withered.
I'm looking over to the off camera to the right. I've got a piece of paper taped to a studio lighting. And it says on the headline, practice, seeing opportunities in everything. Problems and challenges are perspectives. And then the other one that's not on there, when I should update that, is if you were to add what's the opportunity in this? So I borrowed something from Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. When life throws you lemons, make lemonade. So I was looking for different ways to make a variety of different, metaphorically, lemonades over the last year. And I've had some wonderful new friendships, guests on here on my business Renovator. It's been in many ways amazing. Has it been without its ups and downs? Oh no, I've had all those. I've had all those.
Oh yeah. But I think, again, it's all perspective. And a lot of the people, and I'm like you, I've met a ton of people over the last year and, learned a lot about sort of, balance and gratitude and, taking stock of the things you've got versus the things you don't. And I think, that's the big thing to get, to at least propel you forward. Because again, a lot of things, have come up, a lot of things that are, what seem like irresolvable problems that, when you engage with other people, you really think through things, you do find a path forward. And so, in some ways, a lot of people have found, I won't say it a good thing, but they found it was, it was a good process to get more connected to people that they should have known in the first place, or to really start thinking about, the business in a different way, that perhaps they should have done a few years ago that, because of the pandemic and because of the lockdown, just because of the, the circumstances, they had to do it now.
It became kind of a catalyst or a lever.
Yeah, I read something recently, I think it was on LinkedIn, where they were just saying, really the pandemic and the lockdown and everything else has brought the future to now.
Yeah.
The things you thought about doing and you wanted to do, and I'll get to it when I get to it. Well, it sort of pulled all of that and said, okay, you don't have a choice. You're going to do some of that now. Technology is a good, is a good thing, but it's something a lot of people just, didn't consider until they had to.
You just reminded me of another favorite phrase from that same mentor that talked about jarring your preserves.
Yeah.
And he says, or said, that change happens one of two ways: impact or constant space repetition. Constant space repetition is deliberately setting a goal, a vision, an ideal life, and then thinking about, affirming, and then taking action towards those things to get you to where you want to get to. This is a heart attack, loss of a job, loss of love, a pandemic, right? And then it's how do we respond to all of that stuff? Yeah,
that's a good point. Because you can do it by design, you can do it, as a result of sort of a shock to the system. And everybody got a pretty rude awakening, and it was a shock to the system where, I got to tell you, with clients and just people I know, the speed at which people had to work virtually, had to start communicating, in a virtual way, share information virtually, get in contact with their clients and customers so that they could keep the business running. I mean, is amazing to see, but it also made you realize that, that shock to the system made a lot of things happen that otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah. Hey, as a business coach, fellow business coach,
Yeah.
Is there a story, a client that you have that you, when you think about them and where they started when they first met you and where they ended up as a result of working with you, or where they're heading still? Is there somebody you'd like to share a story around? The reason I bring that up is many people don't. Well, why I bring it up is, here's the reason. A lot of people that own businesses are doing okay in many ways, and don't see the value or need to have an outside source help them. So some would say there's a huge demand for business coaches. I don't think there is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge need, unknown or recognized need, and there's a lot of apathy. So to help people understand some of the values that come out of working with a business coach like you or me, or someone else, if you were to share a story, that would help them understand the value of working with Ted, for example.
Well, what's interesting, and I think you and I probably have the same sort of approach. I won't necessarily take one client, because this is kind of a thing I find with some of the clients I've taken on over the last few years, is that just by the sheer nature of the process we go through, because typically, like a lot of small businesses, most people, again, like you were saying, some people plan for success. A lot of people just happen into it. Right. And so one of the things we do as business coaches is try and get people to align themselves to, what is your plan? What is your business plan going forward? How do you, where do you want to be 12 months from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And what's that going to look like? And let's pull that back now into the current year and start talking about what are the activities and what are the things you're going to measure to measure success. And I find two things happen there. One is it starts getting people to really start focusing on what matters versus, it's the old important versus urgent, if you're a Stephen Covey fan. But it's also something so that people start thinking in terms of, okay, if I start doing these things, it's like you've said to me in the past, it starts activating your reticular activating system. And as soon as you start, talking to people about certain things, it's amazing things that come their way. They start getting more in business because they're focusing a little bit more on business development. They start making more money because they're a little more focused on their expenses, or they're focused more on their bottom line. And what I find with a lot of business owners, as I'm sure you do too, is that a lot of times they have nobody to bounce ideas off of, issues off of, or have somebody say, in some cases, are you sure you want to do that? What's your objective in actually doing, whatever the activity is? So I find a lot of time with business coaching and with clients in general is a lot of the gains come from just getting them to be, a little, not always a ton more, but a little more deliberate in what they do, and also more business oriented in the decisions they make. And once they start doing that, they start realizing that that end result they were looking for when they started their business 5 years ago, 10 years, whatever the time frame is now much more within their grasp than they thought it was. Oh, I can't hear you, Phil.
I was doing a mime. Thanks for that. I had muted myself. I was saying thank you for bringing the RAS up, the reticular activating system. We all have it. It's working for us all the time. It's heightened awareness around the things that are harmful to us and helpful to us. So, for example, if people say I don't have one of the ones that I use as an example is, have you ever bought a new car or a newer car than what you had before? And what do you notice besides it smells newer, it rides nicer than the old clunker one that you might have had before? Besides all of that, what else do you notice? And typically what happens is you notice that everybody else, or maybe not everybody, but a number of people have the same good taste you do and have got the same car. So that's your reticular activating system. It wasn't important enough to be even aware, so it filtered all those cars out. It was irrelevant. As soon as you have one, now you have a heightened awareness. Or if you're thinking about buying one or moving into that type of a car, you'll start seeing them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So what we as coaches do is help people get laser focused on the things that matter, that take them to where they want to go, and help them be congruent to the things that they said were important to them. So when they're going off course, I don't know about you, I don't care what people's goals are, they had better. And my job is to help them, remind themselves, challenge them to see if they're on course to where they want to go, or if they've changed their mind. If they've changed their mind, that's okay. Just help them make sure that that's the right thing to do. And as a result of that, one of my favorite client stories, it's not a current one, and it had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was about an accounting, a small accounting firm owner wanted to live half the time in a tropical climate. Didn't like the winter anymore. Lives in Alberta, but used to live in Alberta. Anyway, working with her.
Don't blame them there.
I don't blame her either. And she had 3 kids, raising them by herself, and wasn't really happy with the way her business was going. So working with her, helping her identify what was most important to her. And when we first started, it was just a kind of a blue sky wish to be able to have that happen. Well, in her case, it happened in less than 12 months. She moved to and lives in Cancun for 6 months. Now she's a full-time resident, but it started out wanting to stay out of the cold, and she made that happen and has done that. And it's not a huge economical or change in revenue stream. She did make more money and got rid of some clients that didn't align with her core values.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't about making a ton of money and getting rich. It was more about a lifestyle, using her business to make that happen. So
and
proud moments.
Joe, to that point, because this is something that I've become acutely aware of over the years, is that with almost no exceptions, whatever somebody's looking for, like whatever their goals are or whatever their dreams are, they're within their grasp. It's just a question of how badly do they want it, and are they willing to do the work to get there? And I think that's a huge realization that, I've rarely run into somebody that, that can't do it. It's just a question of whether they want to and whether they're willing to put in the time.
And what I totally agree with that. And what I found in many cases is, and sometimes in my own thinking, is I'm thinking of the reasons why it's hard to do, difficult to do. And when I have talked to my coach, the clutter in my head that's blocking me from being my best fill tends to get aligned or knocked out of the way, and I move forward a lot quicker and faster, and with way less stress. I mean, the things we tell ourselves sometimes, it's crazy how we limit our potential. I wanted to make sure that people that are watching this now or on the replay know how to get a hold of you. So I put up your LinkedIn connection. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can go find Ted there. There's the link right there. I'll leave it there for a little bit here.
Yep. Just look up my name, look for this face. You're all set.
There you go. Right. And he's worth hanging out with, getting to know him. Is there any last business related tip that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, the one thing I have learned over the pandemic, and it's all about community. I mean, I started up a bunch of groups just to get people together. And one of the things I would say to anybody is that, if you're looking to grow your business, it's not a solo sport. You can't do it on your own. Surround yourself with really good people and try not to be the smartest person in the room. And if you do, the success is there.
I can't top that. That's brilliant. So, Ted, I really thank you for fitting us into your schedule today and being a guest. I knew you'd add great value, and you have.
Thanks for letting me put a jacket on today, too. I appreciate that.
No worries. Anytime. You have my permission to wear one all the time if you want.
I won't go that far.
Not that far.
Yet.
Okay. I'll see you shortly.
Okay.
So if you have seen this, liked it, want to know more, you can join the Facebook group that I have. It's called the Business Renovator. And if there's somebody that could benefit by seeing what we talk about on hearing what we talk about on the Business Renovator, send them our way. If you're watching this on the replay, please put hashtag replay. Share this out with people you like and care about and think could benefit by this. And if you have somebody that has some value that would be worth sharing, happy to have a conversation with them to put them on the Business Renovator so we could share their message to the world. On that note, this is it for another edition of the Business Renovator. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.